Hello, Colorado Realtors. I'm Liz Peetz, and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for CAR. If it's October, it's both Halloween and ballot season. Ballots started being mailed out last Friday, October 8th. And so before you turn in your mail ballot, we're going to talk this morning about what's on your ballot. And we're going to start with some of our statewide initiatives. So looking at one that you may not fully understand, Amendment 78. This deals with custodial funds. What are custodial funds, you may ask? These are any types of funds that could be given to a legislative body, such as emergency relief funds, legal settlements, grants, transportation, or federal funds. Currently, some of our executive agencies have the ability to spend funds on their own without going through the legislature. Amendment 78 would say all funds have to go through the legislature for approval. So this one is your call. We don't have a position on this measure, but hopefully that provides you some helpful information. Now, let's talk about some of the issues that we might consider either a trick or a treat. These are dealing with housing and property taxes that I think you'll find a strong interest in. So let's start with Proposition 120. This is all about property tax reduction and whether or not it's going to be a permanent property tax reduction or a temporary. And that's the reason why it's kind of complicated and we don't have a position. So as it passed the title board, the ballot issue that you are voting on would give a permanent property tax reduction for both the commercial property owners and the residential property owners. However, the legislature decided to pass a bill, Senate Bill 293, that could alter the ballot issue that you are voting on. If 293 remains law, that would mean that you only get a temporary property tax reduction for residential. You would get a permanent property tax reduction if you are multifamily or commercial. So what's going to control the legislative outcome or the ballot title? Honestly, we don't know. There's going to be lawsuits. So if I were you, I would make the decision based on the outcome that you want to see. And the other thing that you need to consider is, should the legislature be able to overturn a ballot measure? It's going to be very interesting to watch. So when you vote on Proposition 120, you have a lot to think about. So let's go to some of our local issues. There are a lot of interesting issues on your ballot that you might want to think about. And we do have local ballot guides that we're going to be hosting on our website as well, so check with your local board as well. First, let's talk about what's going on in Castle Rock. This is Measure 2A. We think this is a pretty big trick. Here's the issue. It is going to add $30,000 to the cost of a new home build. It's literally a $13 million tax on your neighbors on top of already high existing fees. It could make Castle Rock one of the most expensive places to build in the entire country. Do we support giving money to firefighters? Absolutely. The problem is the way this initiative is drafted, it will add $7 per usable square foot onto new construction builds. So our very firefighters and civil servants who would like to live in their community and oftentimes have to, will not be able to afford to buy a house in Castle Rock if this goes through. It's really deceiving. So we highly recommend a no on that procedure or that ballot measure. And so does our local board, the Denver Metro Board of Realtors. Speaking of Denver, we also have one other initiative we want to raise to your attention. This is 304. It's a cap on sales tax. Many of you guys who might live in Denver already know there's a cap on property taxes, so it can only go up a certain amount a year. The issue with this measure and why we think it's a trick is because if it passes, Denver city officials are going to have to take some pretty drastic measures to reduce sales tax immediately. They don't have too much discretion about eliminating one sales tax versus another. And we had conversations with local Denver city officials of how would you implement this if it's impacted. And here's what I really want you to pay attention to. They told us if this passes, they would be able and might have to consider increasing property tax mills to make up the difference. Those are outside of the current property tax gap. Those would be mill levies, so they can do this. So one of the things you really need to think about is, do you want your property taxes to go up in Denver? If you don't want them to go up, then I would say vote no on Denver's 304. The last thing I'm going to say is please, please vote. No matter what your decision is, whether on the local issue or the state issue, your vote really counts. And we're so fortunate here in Colorado because we have mail balloting, and you can trace your ballot. All you need to do is when you get your ballot in the mail, turn it in before November 2nd or on November 2nd by 7 p.m. Thanks for watching, and we're so thrilled to have you participate in our democracy.